Hey guys, welcome back. So I want to thank everybody who's been following along with this video series on the turbo build. If you guys have been keeping up so far, I want to congratulate you for keeping up with my incoherent rambling, and I got another video full of incoherent rambling for you if that's what you like. This video is going to jump around a little bit because there's a lot of little things tackling, trying to get the thing ready. So we're working on mounting up the intercooler, the radiator, working on the steering shaft, and we actually will attempt a first fire up on this car, and I'm actually really excited about getting that done. Now, it shouldn't be that hard to start it up. It was running and driving prior to starting the turbo kit, but we want to make sure that nothing is leaking, that the turbos are getting oiled, that there's no major exhaust leaks. I do want to start it up at least one time, even though it's not completed, to make sure that everything's working well together before making all the final modifications to the turbo kit and getting it sealed up for good. I want to thank you guys for liking and subscribing. We've been getting our subscriber count up quite a bit lately, so we're really working hard to get some better content out for you guys. I think we're only going to have about one more video on the turbo build before it's pretty much taken care of, but just in case you guys want to keep up, we do have other projects that we're working on. We're going to start working on the LSx Swaps Fox body turbo build soon, so that's going to be similar, but that car is going to be a beast. So we're actually going to be going much bigger turbos. That thing has a lot of built parts on it, so make sure you check out the videos on the LSx Swaps Fox body. But for now, let's go ahead and get started on finishing this turbo kit and getting it started up. So next up on the list is going to be mounting the intercooler. The only problem I'm going to run into are the supports for the bumper in the front end. I'm not going to have the amount of room that I'm really going to need to be able to mount the intercooler between these two to actually get it up high enough to clear the bottom of the bumper. So what I'm going to do is flip these upside down like this. I was actually going to run them the other way, but this actually give me the most clearance, because then these will actually give me the room I need to go on the inside of here. Right now I'm going to start working on building the bracket that will hold the intercooler. This is the original OEM fan mount location, but since I've moved to 2 electric fans that'll be on the other side of the radiator, this will not be used anymore, and I'm deciding to keep this bracket and just weld on a couple tabs here and here, and then also later we'll bring some more tabs down onto the bottom, and that'll be the new mount location for the intercooler. So right now I'm going to go ahead, and I've already measured it and the tab locations where I need to grind off some paint here and mount on these tabs. So I already know that at that location the two tabs on the intercooler here, that'll be here and here, will keep the bottom of the intercooler about an inch higher than the bottom of the bumper, so I don't have to worry about bottoming out if I hit like a curb or in a parking stall or anything like that. So I'm going to start getting these ones worked on and get this intercooler mounted up.
All right, so that was an awfully quick job. So we got the tabs made. We got the intercooler mounted up here, as you can see. It's actually pretty solid, and now I'm able to actually go ahead and get the charge piping, the cold side, mocked up to the turbos. We can see just about how much pipe we're going to need and where we're going to need to cut them to fit. So it looks like the pipes that came in the kit should be just fine left the way they are to actually go from the turbo to the intercooler. I will probably have to modify the ones going up to the intake just because of the way they do sit offset, one top, one bottom, and then they're going to have to meet together in a 2-to-1 splitter and then go to a 3 or 4-inch pipe up to the intake. So that'll be for a later time, but right now we just want to get this in here and get it mocked up. Right now it was just about getting it mounted in place. That way we can get the charge piping, and I can also take care of mocking up the bumper and seeing if there's any trimming that's going to need to be done for that. Don't think there's going to be any trimming to the bumper. It looks like it's going to fit with plenty of clearance around it, but there is some extra meat in there that I can take away if I need to. So the interesting part is going to be how I'm actually going to clear this radiator support. We only have about 1.5 inch clearance before the top of the hood, so it looks like we're going to be using a 3-inch pipe coming from the intake down to where the Y pipe is going to meet. And I've gone over a few different ways of looking at this, and one of the ways would be to take a 3 or 4-inch pipe and then flatten it down and oval it, but it's going to be hard to make this radius like that. The other option is to trim out a portion of the core support here and a little bit of the core support here to make it meet that bend to be able to recess it down. I don't want to take out too much of this because, like I said, we already took out sections of the core support to move the radiator back. They're not really structural, but since this has been trimmed out, I'd like to remove as little metal as possible from the actual support. I'm going to keep this thing as sturdy as possible. If I do end up cutting these out, then I'll go ahead and try to weld in a brace on there just to strengthen it up. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference if I only take out a small section, but if I'm taking out a section here and down here, then I might be looking at weakening this thing a little too much. But like I said, I can always go ahead and put some bracing in the bottom of it. I could always take some flat stock and weld it across the bottom of here. That would actually just strengthen this up pretty good. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. And if I can actually flatten the charge pipe coming to the intake through here, I can actually get that 1.5 inch clearance just fine, and I may only need to take a little bit out here. All right, so a quick update on the steering shaft. What I ended up getting is a universal joint, 32 spline. And what I ended up doing, because the original BMW is a 54 spline, and this actually just slips right over it and is just a very slight bit of play, but there's no way the splines are going to engage. It does have a set screw right there and right there. So what I ended up doing is marked it and drilled it for the set screw. And that's exactly where the set screw is going to go in there, and it's actually a nice, tight, snug fit. I didn't want the steering shaft to just rely on that set screw, and if that broke while I was turning, I'd be pretty much SOL. So what I did is ground a keyway groove in here. Let me see if I can get a better shot of that. Right there. Then I went ahead and ground a groove in the universal joint that matched that location, and I welded in a key. All right. So you can see there's the key. There's a keyway, and there's absolutely no play in that, and that's without the set screw in. So the key will actually lock that in there into the keyway, and then the set screw will go into the bottom, and we'll go ahead and lock that in with a little bit of blue Loctite, and that's actually a nice solid shaft on there. So we don't have to worry about the splines on there, and this was a quick and dirty way of getting this one to mate on here, because I did think about just welding that on there, but then there's no way to actually get the steering shaft in because it has to be fed through the column down, and then it necks down at the bottom here. So this will go ahead and take care of the steering shaft, and this will give me a lot more room. I might still have to clearance the header just a little. The other steering shaft was like twice the size of this, and I'd have to clearance it a lot. So hopefully I won't have to do that at all. We're going to go ahead and get this on there and find out if that's going to take care of it. Alright, so for the radiator, I know there's been a few questions about how I'm going to be mounting this. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it just because this is going to get changed later on. Right now, just for keeping the price down on the swap, we're going to keep the original OEM radiator. It was doing a good job beforehand. We'll see how it performs after. No way to tell until we actually do it. So these pieces of angled aluminum are going to get riveted into the side of the radiator, all 4 sides here. And then I'm going to do another one over here. And then I'm going to reuse the factory mounts that are on the bottom of the radiator. I'm just going to relocate the tabs into the core support, so that way this can sit in the bottom of there and its rubber bushings, and then this will swing into the core support, and then I can just bolt it through the top. This is what I'm working with here. It's ugly, but like I said, this is just a temporary solution. I will prime these just so they don't rust, but like I said, look at that ugliness right there. Doesn't really matter, it's just temporary. So what will end up happening is, like so, gets riveted in here, and then flipped over, 4 holes, riveted into the side of the radiator, and that'll allow me to drop that bolt through there, just like that. And it should be a nice solid solution for now. Alright, and then for the actual radiator, for the bottom, like I said, we got the rubber bushings here. We got these mounts, and all it needs is the tabs that are actually on the frame, and then I'll just weld them into the bottom of the core support, and this will actually hold it in on the bottom, and it'll be isolated as well. So we're just going to reuse the factory option here, and that'll actually hold the whole radiator in once it gets mounted in from the, this is actually upside down, so once it gets mounted in from here with those bolts, this will hold it in nice and steady. So as you can see how much material I ended up notching out from the core support, and the whole radiator actually tucks in there. And so if I actually put my finger on the core support here, that's how far back from the tip of my finger to the front of that radiator that it sits into the core support. So only about that much. Hang on 1 second. It's actually about a 1/4 inch that it actually protrudes past, and that's actually only this front lip here. And then over here on the sides where the actual end of the core is, that actually sticks out from the core support. That light sucks. Just under 1 inch. So being that the overall thickness of the radiator is over 2 inches, that does actually push it forward quite a bit, considering it used to live its life outside of the core support completely. So we've actually gained just about 2 inches by moving it forward like this. Alright, so I've been trying to stay pretty consistent in getting this work done. Right now I'm just getting everything put back together, so that way I can test all the final fitments and see what else needs to be clearance. There's a little bit of work to do. I do have a little bit of a tight area here. So down here we actually have our 2 coolant lines are feeding our return, which are actually going back here to our reservoir. And we also have the 2 transcooler lines, and then the oil line running to feed this passenger side turbo. But I'm going to get some heat shielding for all 5 of those lines down there to keep them away from the headers. About say 1 inch or so away from the header, and then about 1 inch or so away from the downpipe. So I don't have a whole lot of room to go up or down with those lines, so I need to get those heat shielded. I am going to heat wrap the headers because they're just too close to everything. They're really close to the strut tower. On the driver's side, they are just about touching, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more clearance on the steering shaft down here. But we do have everything fitting in just right, and they're not making contact. So a little bit more clearancing and just make me happy. So I ended up grabbing this pressure bottle from my neighbor, and I'll be able to use this to replace the original pressure bottle. I do need to get a reservoir also, but I don't have one right now. I ended up fabbing up a bracket, and you see, it'll work. It's not the prettiest thing, I'll paint it up, but it'll work. And everything's relocated over here to this passenger side area, which was kind of like a dead area. There was nothing happening over here. So now I have the climate control module and the pressure bottle mounted up over here, and keeps the engine bay looking a little more symmetric. There's just a big dead spot over there. I didn't really care for it too much. So now I think it looks a little bit better. So now I have the coolant lines running through to feed the pressure bottle, and then back up into the water pump. Alright guys, we got everything put back together, mostly everything put back together. We got oil in it. There's no radiator on it right now, but we're going to try a quick startup. Everything should work, so we're going to check to make sure that the turbos are getting oiled and that we're not leaking oil. The oil pan is on, everything's full, filter on, everything's ready to go, so the engine should be fine. We're not going to run it very long because we don't have coolant, And I took the belt off because there is coolant still in the motor, and we don't want it firing right out of there when I fire it up. Now I did disconnect the coil packs a little bit ago, and I cranked it for about 20 seconds, so I don't think that's enough to get any oil up to the turbos yet. There is a little bit of oil residue inside these turbos, so they're not going to be running dry. I'm only going to run it for a short period, and then I'm going to make sure that I have oil in the turbos. I'm going to correct the lines off, make sure that I get oil pouring out. So this is just a quick fire up, and this is just to see that everything's still working on here and there's no issues. That's just on about 1,000 RPM idle. Oh, it sounds so good too. All right, good enough. Woo! I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really happy by that. That was actually the quickest this thing's ever fired up. I was actually really surprised. So I was for sure that it was going to bog out because there's no math on there. It is set for speed density, but I haven't tuned anything. I just applied it, and there's no narrowband O2s. So I'm just really surprised that it fired up that good and ran that good. And it sounds nice. I like this. It's going to be really hard for me to put an exhaust on here now. So right now the exhaust dumps right underneath the passenger side door, and it really wasn't that bad. It had a really nice chop to it. I really like the way that sounds. So I think I might just go ahead and put a cutout on there, and that way I can just open it up and listen to that. It sounds good. I love it. I'm really happy this thing fired right up. Both turbos were spooling immediately on just idle. So I was told that they're going to fire off really quickly because of how small they are. But I also heard that the cheaper turbos don't spool that great, so I wasn't positive that they were going to. But they were moving quite a bit of air just sitting there at idle. So we got it started, and that's just a big victory for me right there. That's the first time ever doing anything like this, and I knew it was going to start because we didn't do anything major to it to stop it from starting, but just getting it, doing that much work and then putting it back together and then it firing up like it did, it just makes me super happy. Nothing's wrong. Everything was running really good. Sounds nice and crisp. Throttle's really responsive, so there's going to be some tuning to do for it and a little bit more work on here, but I like where it's at right now. Alright, so that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoy what we're doing here. I hope that you like the content we're putting out. We're trying to get better with it. We're trying to get some more stuff going on here, especially like that there. So don't forget to do the necessary. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.